Marvel fans, just when you thought it was safe to go back out on the internet, there are even more Spider-Man No Way Home leak stuff that we have not yet talked about. It's pretty freaking wild. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? It's Josh coming at you from Nerd Ventures Tower as per usual. And yeah, man, there are even more leaks coming out about Spider-Man No Way Home. This sort of came out in a flurry just over the last hour at the time of recording this video. So let's get into some of the things. I do want to issue a spoiler warning, although I don't think these are major spoilers. And in fact, everything else for the movie's leaking. I mean, come on. It is what it is. You know the drill. Let's do it. This report is something that's coming from Daniel Rickman's Patreon. There's actually a number of different cool things he talks about there, but it's corroborated by a report on thecosmiccircus.com, which came out right around the same time. I'm not exactly sure who to credit this information with, but they both have very reliable sources. They're both talking about it, so that's what we're going to talk about. And here we go. Let's look at this first post here. This was posted by this Spider-Man No Way Home news and countdown account on Twitter, who is apparently a member of Daniel's Patreon. It says here that Stone and Dunst were supposed to have a cameo in No Way Home, but could not because of Rona, and Feige had plans to bring them back, or he has plans to bring them back for another project. That's pretty wild, as we did hear that Kevin Feige is producing 2 more Sony movies. This has kind of slipped under the radar. Some people think you could see even more even more Tobey and Andrew. At this point, nothing would surprise me. It all seems crazy. But here's where the real juice is, ladies and gentlemen. Down here it says, it is confirmed in No Way Home that both Sandman and Lizard died by their Peter a few years after the events of Spider-Man 2 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, so that's number one. Pretty freaking wild, but also if you look over at this article on Cosmic Circus, they corroborate this. And let's read here what it says. It says here, many fans going to see these more recent Spidey movies are individuals whose childhood was either defined by either the Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man or by Mark Webb's duology of Amazing Spider-Man films, with Spider-Man No Way Home revealing itself to be a crossover story of multiversal implications. The concept of a live-action Spider-Verse quickly overtook the main conversation regarding this movie's plot. This plot point will be significant for a critical reason. Not only will we get 3 iterations of Spider-Man all in the same spot, but we'll be able to delve into their lore, stories, and what they've been up to for the last couple of years. One of the reasons some fans are so cautious about seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield return to the big screen is because they're afraid Marvel Studios could botch the stories they built up over the last couple of years. Allow me to provide an example. Pay close attention to the second No Way Home trailer that dropped last week, specifically to the part where Stephen Strange says they all die fighting Spider-Man. Given that these iterations of Spidey villains are the same ones we saw in previous films all those years ago, some of these characters' deaths don't line up. The first example would be Sandman from Spider-Man 3, whom we know Peter Parker forgave and let go be free following their confrontation. The other example would be the Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man, who was jailed at the end of the conflict. So how would they have died, according to what Strange says? Sources close to the production have informed us that the lore from the universe of these 2 Spider-Men, Tobey and Andrew, will be expanded upon during the film. We'll be given some backstory as to what the Spideys have been up to in their world since their sagas ended. This includes learning about how Sandman died in the years following Spider-Man 3 and how Lizard passed away years after The Amazing Spider-Man. Another significant point addressed during the film is the kind of toll that being Spider-Man has taken on Maguire and Garfield's adaptation. This type of world-building plot is going to be significant for the fans of these franchises. John Watts had the uphill task of not only developing his own iteration of Spider-Man, but continuing and building upon the previous iterations that are already such recognizable characters in pop culture. Luckily, sources also tell us that the former directors, Raimi and Webb, were consulted during the development of these characters, so at least knowing their version will be continued as the directors intended should be reassuring to some fans. Okay, so that is pretty wild. There's even more actually that I want to get into because Sony's gonna Sony when it comes to making movies. But let's stop for a second and talk about that. So it kind of seems like what Daniel is saying and what they're saying over on Cosmic Circus are the same thing, that we are going to have it explained to us that yes, those Peter Parkers did either kill or were involved in a scenario which led to the death of the Lizard and Sandman. Now, I already see some fans out there freaking out about this. Tobey wouldn't kill, Andrew wouldn't kill, etc., etc. Spider-Man doesn't kill. Well, I think one of the things that's going to be told in this movie, and this has to do with the sort of crazy toll that being Spider-Man and being a hero takes on you, is that they actually let these dudes go, and then more people were hurt and killed, and it could get really, really bad as to what exactly happens with these characters down the line, okay? So that's number one, and I think that whether or not these characters purposely kill these villains, have a moment of weakness where they kill them, or are just engaged with a battle that leads to their death, this closes up a lot of plot holes that we were seemingly dealing with regards to what Strange was saying and the past characters. I also love the fact that the two directors were consulted about this, so that should really put fans at ease, because it's at least that the directors and the helmers of those characters before had a say in what the history or lore past the movies that we saw on screen was for these characters. So I find that to be really exciting. I'm really interested in how that whole scene's going to go down. What are they actually going to say to Tom? Are they going to set up a scenario in which you might see Tom cross a line and actually kill one of the villains he is dealing with and deal with a similar situation that they are dealing with? Do those Peter Parkers feel like they screwed up the first time they let these villains go? Do they have some insight? Have they grown? And will our Peter Parker, Tom Holland, see what they have to say and change the way he approaches the final battle due to these discussions? I don't know. It's a really cool sort of leak and spoiler, but it kind of adds even more questions for me, which I am excited to find out the answers of when we finally all see this film. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, and this is really freaking wild as well, this is coming from that same Twitter account, which is sharing information that Daniel's dropping on his Patreon right now, but is literally that Sony is developing a solo movie for Sandman, and some reason a solo movie for Rhino. Okay, so that's really, really interesting. I mean, can we really blame them for doing such? I mean, it's really interesting that they want to do all these different villains. I think Sandman could be really compelling, as the visual effects for that are awesome. The character's really, really cool. And then Rhino. I don't get it, man. I don't fully understand what they could be doing with Rhino. They could be setting up a whole new Rhino character, kind of like what they did with Morbius and Venom, or they're doing these characters in the MCU, creating solo movies for them, okay? So first of all, it's kind of just laughable to me, because it's like, Sony's gonna Sony. What the hell are they doing? We don't really understand the plan, right? But also, this might hint at some plans that Sony and Marvel have for the characters past No Way Home. Maybe these characters don't die. Maybe you see Rhino for a split second in No Way Home, and he's then not with the rest of the team, and we follow him in a solo movie. Perhaps that's what happened to Sandman. I mean, at this point, we're saying that Sandman is going to die. He's going to be killed by Tobey in his respective universe. Are we going to then watch him survive this movie, go back to the universe in a way where he doesn't die, or is he just going to be staying in the MCU? And what's interesting about that is that there was a report that came out yesterday from Grace Randolph, which I know some of you guys are like, but you know, I continue to trust her as a source. You know, put your hate-filled comments in the comment section. But she said you are definitely going to see Venom in the movie for a very important scene that changes things majorly. Other than that, she didn't really describe what the scene was, but to me, the idea of Venom coming into the MCU, being there in Spider-Man No Way Home, and having major consequences on how things are going to go from here kind of hints to me that although they were from a different universe, that now Sony and Marvel are all going to be taking place together in a singular universe, that this multiverse of madness era, this craziness past Loki and into Spider-Man No Way Home, that we might actually see all of these characters being in the same universe together. And could you see a scenario in which a Sandman movie and a freaking Rhino movie are in the MCU during this craziness where all of these universes are jarbled together? I don't know. It just it just sounds absolutely crazy to me. And it made me think of the whole Venom situation, the old Tyrese comments about how everything is now in the MCU. And it kind of seems like that's the direction things could be heading in a post Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness world, or perhaps even just after No Way Home. There are still so many different questions about what is exactly happening in this movie. And to add into all of this craziness, we did recently hear that there's only going to be 5 villains in No Way Home. I did a TikTok about this over the weekend. You might want to check it out over there because I'm going to be dropping like little news bits over on the TikTok. But this was also talked about by Daniel Richtman. And one of the reasons about this was the fact that they only want the 5 villains to set up the Sinister Six down the line. Sony's been trying to do Sinister Six for a long time. They've been developing these different villains. It just totally makes sense that they want a Sinister Six, okay? But are we seeing a scenario in which what's going to happen is we'll see these villains team up from across the multiverse, right? Then other villains will see this, become inspired by this idea, and then formulate an official Sinister Six. That is possible, and perhaps that has to do with why Sandman and Rhino are also going to be developed. And so maybe what you're going to get is a Vulture, a Sandman, a Rhino, a Morbius, and then maybe also a Mysterio and Green Goblin or something of that nature. Like maybe you're seeing some of the villains that Sony wants to bring together for a Sinister Six down the line. We also know they're developing a Kraven, so maybe add Kraven into that mix as well. This is definitely a big deal for Sony. We could be seeing a lot of just little pieces of evidence for how Sony wants to fit all of this different stuff together, and hopefully after we see the movie, a lot more of this will make sense. Feige should hopefully be involved. And it's also interesting how this could all tie in together with big rumors we've heard of a 5-movie contract that is currently sitting in front of Tom Holland. Okay, now if you haven't heard some of this stuff, it's pretty wild. Apparently they want Tom Holland for 5 more movies. This is another trilogy and 2 other sort of spin-off Sony movies, okay? And you could see how they would likely want a Sinister Six to be fighting against Tom Holland's Spider-Man for one of those 5 films. It's also really important to note that one of the things Tom Holland is looking at is bringing in Miles Morales as a character to pass the baton to him as Spider-Man. He even said in the GQ interview, maybe it's time for a Miles Morales character, and according to a lot of reports, that's something he's heavily using as a negotiating tactic. He wants to A, get a big bag of money, as he absolutely should, but B, he really wants Marvel to bring in Miles Morales and have his Peter Parker mentor Miles Morales. So it's absolute craziness, man. Tons of fun Spider-Man stuff out there. A lot to speculate about. There's all those new TV spots, which we recently talked about on a live stream, but it's just so much Spider-Man hype. These new leaks are wild, so let me know what you think about it. Lizard and Sandman being killed or being caused to die during a fight with Spider-Man. What do you think about Tobey Maguire killing or leading to the death of Sandman? What do you think about Andrew Garfield leading to the death of the Lizard? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think this movie is just going to be way too crazy, or are you here for the hype train? Let me know in the comments section below. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to our channel to see more of our content pop up in your recommended feed, and go check out the live streaming channel, man. We went over all those TV spots. We're always having a good time over on the live streaming channel, and watch parties are back. Hawkeye's coming out this week. We'll be doing a watch party, and we'll be doing a live reaction stream after it's all said and done, so go check that out as well. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.